My name is Dustin Pierce. I'm 35 years old, and up until a year ago, I thought I had my life figured out. I was working as a certified pipeline welder at Tacoma Shipyard in Washington. Nothing glamorous, but it was solid work, union benefits, the kind of job that pays you well enough to sleep at night without checking your bank account first thing in the morning. Pipeline welding isn't something you just fall into. It takes years to master the precision required for 6G position welds on high-pressure systems. Every bead has to pass X-ray inspection because a single flaw can mean catastrophic failure down the line. I'd spent 7 years perfecting that craft, working my way up from basic structural welding to the specialized work that keeps oil and gas flowing across the country. I was engaged to Brianna Pierce. She was 32, worked as an HR manager for a regional insurance firm, and we'd been living together for 2 years. We got engaged 8 months before everything fell apart. She used to say she wanted to build something real with someone who had ambition. She'd say it during dinners, during weekend drives to the coast, whenever we talked about our future. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She seemed proud when I told her friends about my work, about the technical expertise required, about how pipeline welders were the backbone of American energy infrastructure. At least, that's what I thought at the time. Then the closure happened. The shipyard got bought out by a corporation from Portland. They kept about 30% of the workforce. I wasn't in that 30%. Just like that, after 7 years of perfect attendance, safety records that management used to brag about, and welds that never failed inspection, I was out. 2 weeks severance and a form letter thanking me for my service. I remember sitting in my truck in the parking lot, staring at that letter, my welding gear still in the back, my Lincoln electric welding machine, my tungsten electrodes, my gas regulators, all the tools I'd invested in over the years to do the job right, wondering what the hell I was supposed to do next. I didn't panic. That's not how you survive in the trades. When something breaks, you assess the situation, identify your resources, and figure out a solution. I started looking for work immediately. Called up contractors I knew, checked the union hall daily, took on whatever welding jobs I could find. The problem was half of Tacoma's industrial sector was consolidating at once. Boeing was laying off, the port was cutting back, and every skilled tradesman in the area was competing for the same diminishing pool of work. Everyone said they were hiring, but no one was actually bringing people on full time. So I adapted. I sold my Harley. It was a 2018 Street Glide. Nothing too fancy, but it cleared about $14,000. That bought me time and kept the bills current while I figured out my next move. I started taking freelance welding contracts. Fence repairs for residential, properties, custom railings for local businesses, small structural work that required someone who knew the difference between 70-18 and 60-13 electrodes. It wasn't the high-stakes pipeline work I was trained for, but it kept my skills sharp and money coming in. Brianna didn't see it that way. At first she was supportive, or at least she pretended to be. She'd ask how the job search was going, tell me something would turn up soon, but I could feel the shift starting almost immediately. It was in the way she looked at me when I came home with metal shavings on my clothes instead of a clean office shirt. The way she stopped talking about wedding venues and started saying we should take things one step at a time. The way her voice changed when her HR friends asked what I did for work, and she'd have to explain that I was between positions. The conversations got shorter, the silences got longer. She started working late more often, going out with her corporate friends on weekends without mentioning it until she was already out the door. I'd catch her looking at me sometimes with this expression I couldn't quite read, like she was reassessing something she'd previously been sure about. I didn't push it. I figured she needed space to process what was happening, and honestly, I was too focused on trying to keep us afloat financially to fight about something I couldn't control. In the trades, you learn that complaining about problems doesn't fix them. Action fixes them. I kept working, kept networking, kept believing that if I just put in the effort, maintained my standards, and stayed professional, the right opportunity would come along. That's how it had always worked before. Then came the Tuesday morning in early October 2024. I was at my workbench in the garage, cleaning my welding helmet after finishing a job for a local restaurant. They'd needed some custom exhaust duct work, nothing complicated, but it paid $500 and kept me busy for a weekend. Brianna walked in already dressed for work, coffee in hand, looking like she'd been rehearsing something. She stood there for a moment, watching me organize my equipment, then just said it. I can't tie myself to someone with no career trajectory. No build-up, no discussion, no acknowledgement of the 7 years I'd spent building expertise in one of the most demanding trades in industrial construction. Just that one sentence delivered like she was reading from a corporate memo she'd been drafting for weeks. I set down my helmet and looked at her. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't try to explain that skilled trades were the foundation of every major infrastructure project in America. I just said, I understand. She blinked like she'd expected more of a fight, but I meant it. I understood exactly what she was saying. She wasn't leaving because we'd grown apart or because we wanted different things. She was leaving because I'd lost my corporate-approved job. Because I wasn't the stable, predictable option her HR training manual said she should choose. Because the moment things required actual commitment, she decided I wasn't worth the investment. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and perfect timing, you're going to love what happens next. Each twist more satisfying than the last. She packed a bag that afternoon, took her clothes, her skincare routine, a few books, said she'd come back for the rest later. I told her to take her time. She left without looking back, and I sat there for a while after she was gone, just staring at the garage where I'd been working. Part of me felt relieved. Part of me felt like I'd just failed some test I didn't know I was taking. But mostly I just felt tired. Tired of trying to prove my worth to someone who measured everything in terms of office politics and benefit packages. What Brianna didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that 4 days earlier on Friday afternoon, I'd bought a $20 scratch-off ticket at Morrison's hardware store. I'd just finished a welding job for their loading dock, earned $500 cash for fixing some cracked support brackets, and stopped inside to grab some tungsten electrodes for my TIG torch. Morrison's was the kind of place that smells like metal and sawdust, where the coffee tastes like it's been sitting since dawn, and the guys behind the counter actually know the difference between 6010 and 7024 welding rods. Real people who understood that skilled work had value, even if it got your hands dirty. I had a 20 left over after paying for supplies. The scratch-offs were right there by the register, next to the beef jerky and energy drinks. I picked one called Lucky Strike and scratched it off in my truck. Won $500. Figured why not try again? Bought another one. Won $50. Then I did something completely out of character. I drove to the gas station across town and bought 5 $100 Powerball tickets with my welding money. $500 I should have been saving, but something about Brianna's attitude that week had me feeling reckless. I picked my own numbers for one of them. My birthday, Brianna's birthday, the date we moved in together. Looking back, the irony is almost painful. I was using the most important dates of our relationship to buy lottery tickets just days before she'd tell me I had no future. I didn't think about those tickets again until the following Saturday night, 4 days after Brianna left. I was lying in bed alone for the first time in 2 years, scrolling through my phone because I couldn't sleep. The house felt different without her there, quieter, but not in a peaceful way. I saw a news alert about a $2.8 million Powerball jackpot being won in Washington State. Single winner. I almost scrolled past it, but something made me stop. Maybe it was the way the number looked, familiar somehow. I got up, walked to the kitchen, and dug through the drawer where I'd tossed those tickets along with receipts and spare change. Pulled up the winning numbers on my phone. Checked once, my hands steady. Checked twice, feeling something cold start to build in my chest. Checked a third time because the implications were too massive to trust a quick glance. Every single number matched. Every single one. The jackpot was $2.8 million. After taxes and the lump sum reduction, I was looking at roughly $1.8 million, give or take. It wasn't quit your job and buy a yacht money, but it was never worry about bills again. Money. The kind of money that changes everything about how you sleep at night. I sat there in my kitchen at 3 in the morning, staring at that ticket, and I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel relieved. I felt something much colder and more focused. Because all I could think about was Brianna standing in my garage telling me I had no career trajectory. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor. I didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not my buddies from the union hall, not the guys I'd been doing contract work with. This wasn't the kind of news you share over beers at the local bar. This was the kind of news that changes relationships, and I just had a brutal education in how quickly people could walk away when circumstances shifted. The next morning, Sunday, I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I spent 2 hours on Google finding a guy in Seattle who specialized in asset protection and wealth management. Someone who dealt with people who suddenly had money and needed to protect it. His name was Roger Pemberton, and his retainer alone was $3,000. I paid it with a credit card I knew I'd be able to clear in a few weeks. When you're about to have $1.8 million, $3,000 stops feeling like real money. Pemberton didn't ask questions about why a welder from Tacoma needed asset protection services. I told him the situation in broad strokes. Lottery win, recent breakup, needed to ensure clean separation of assets. He nodded like he'd seen it 100 times before. "You were smart to call me before claiming the prize," he said. His voice had that calm authority that comes from handling other people's money professionally. Timing is everything in cases like this. Once that money hits your account, everything changes. People you haven't heard from in years suddenly remember your phone number. We got to work immediately. First priority was making sure Brianna had no legal claim to the winnings. We'd been engaged, not married. We'd lived together, but Washington's common law marriage rules didn't apply to us. The ticket was purchased solely in my name, with my money 4 days after she'd already told me she was leaving. Pemberton documented everything with the precision of someone who'd seen messy breakups turn into expensive lawsuits. "The timeline is crucial here," he explained, pulling out a legal pad and sketching out dates. "She left on Tuesday morning. You bought the ticket the previous Friday. That's not just good timing, that's bulletproof. Sequencing. No court in Washington would consider her entitled to winnings from a ticket purchased after she'd already declared the relationship over." Then we went further. We closed the joint checking account we'd opened when we moved in together. I transferred my half out first, then formally requested closure. I removed her as an authorized user on my credit card. I contacted our landlord and informed him Brianna would no longer be living at the address and that I'd be solely responsible for the lease going forward. Every single financial thread that connected us got severed, one by one. Pemberton helped me claim the prize through an anonymous trust. Washington state allows lottery winners to remain private if they set up the right structure. So, that's exactly what we did. The Dustin Pierce Family Trust collected the winnings. My name never appeared in any public record. No press conference, no oversized check, no local news interview about the lucky welder who struck it rich. Just a wire transfer into an account that only I could access. It took 3 weeks to finalize everything. 3 weeks of paperwork and lawyers and sleepless nights where I kept checking my phone, half expecting Brianna to call and ask to talk things through. She never did. According to her Instagram, which I checked exactly once before blocking her, she seemed perfectly content with her decision. Posted photos of girls' nights out with captions about new chapters and knowing your worth. The irony was so thick you could weld it. Once the money was secured in early November, I made another decision. I was leaving Tacoma. There was nothing keeping me there anymore. No job, no relationship, no reason to stay in a place that had become a reminder of everything that had just collapsed around me. I started looking at properties in Idaho. Somewhere quiet, somewhere nobody would find me unless I wanted to be found. Found a house in Coeur d'Alene, right on the lake. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, sitting on an acre with a dock and a view that stretched for miles. It wasn't a mansion, but it was beautiful in a way that felt earned. The seller was asking $270,000. I offered $285,000 cash. No inspection, close in 10 days. When you can wire money directly from a trust account, things move fast. They accepted within an hour. I packed everything I owned into my F-250 and a small trailer. My welding equipment went first, my Lincoln electric machine, my oxygen and acetylene tanks, my complete set of tungsten electrodes for TIAG work. Tools are the foundation of any tradesman's life, and I wasn't about to start over empty-handed. Then came clothes, books, furniture I actually cared about. Everything else I either sold or left behind. The apartment we'd shared, the restaurants we'd frequented, the entire life I'd built in Tacoma. I was walking away from all of it. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. I deactivated my social media accounts, changed my phone number, updated my address with the post office to a P.O. box in Coeur d'Alene. As far as Tacoma was concerned, Dustin Pierce had simply vanished. The drive to Coeur d'Alene took about 6 hours. I did it on a Wednesday morning in late November when the roads were clear and the air was sharp with the promise of winter. I remember pulling up to the house for the first time as the legal owner, stepping out of the truck, and just standing there. The lake was perfectly still, like a mirror reflecting the pine trees that covered the surrounding hills. The only sound was wind moving through the branches and the occasional call of a loon somewhere out on the water. No traffic, no industrial noise, no Brianna telling me I had no career trajectory. I moved in that same day. Spent the first night on an air mattress because my real furniture wouldn't arrive until Friday. I didn't care. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe without someone watching me, measuring me, finding me inadequate. I wasn't stupid with the money. I'd seen too many stories about lottery winners who went broke within 5 years, buying cars and houses they couldn't maintain, lending money to relatives who never paid it back. I knew $1.8 million could disappear faster than people think if you're not careful. I kept $200,000 liquid for living expenses and emergencies. The rest went into a diversified portfolio that Pemberton's financial advisor designed specifically for people who'd come into sudden wealth. Index funds, bonds, some real estate investment trusts. Nothing flashy, nothing risky, just steady growth that would compound over time. Pemberton connected me with a financial advisor in Spokane who specialized in helping people manage windfalls. Guy named Preston Walsh, who'd spent 20 years helping athletes and business owners protect their money from bad decisions. We met once a month to review everything. The key, Walsh told me during our first meeting, is to live like you don't have it. People who stay wealthy are people who remember what it felt like to worry about money. I started doing volunteer work at the local community college, teaching welding certification classes twice a week. North Idaho Community College had a decent shop, though their equipment was older than what I was used to. Miller welding machines instead of Lincoln, but the principles were the same. I didn't tell them about the money. I just showed up, taught kids how to run a proper bead, how to read the color of the metal to gauge heat, how to maintain consistent travel speed for uniform penetration. It felt good to be useful again, without it being tied to survival. Teaching reminded me why I'd fallen in love with welding in the first place. Before the corporate mergers and the job insecurity and all the noise that comes with trying to build a career in an industry that treats skilled workers like interchangeable parts. There's something pure about taking two pieces of metal and making them, one, creating something stronger than either piece could be alone. The kids were sharp, genuinely interested. Most of them came from families where working with your hands was respected, not looked down on. They asked good questions about technique, about certifications, about what kind of money they could make if they got serious about the trade. Pipeline welding, I told them during one class, requires you to pass tests in all positions: flat, horizontal, vertical, overhead. The hardest is 6G position, where you're welding around a pipe that's positioned at a 45-degree angle. Every inch has to be perfect, because these welds hold pressures that could kill people if they fail. One kid, maybe 18, raised his hand. How long does it take to get that good? Years, I said honestly. But it's worth it. Pipeline welders make more than most office workers, and nobody can offshore your job to another country. 3 months went by, quiet months, good months. I hiked the trails around Lake Coeur d'Alene. I read books I'd never had time for when I was working 60-hour weeks. I learned how to cook something other than microwave dinners, though I'll admit my skills were pretty basic. I met people at the coffee shop in town, had conversations that didn't revolve around work or relationships or money. Started to feel like myself again, or maybe I was becoming someone new. I wasn't sure which, and I didn't really care. Then, in early March 2025, I met Casey Martinez. She was 33, worked as a veterinarian at a clinic outside town. We met at a community potluck at the Coeur d'Alene Community Center. One of those small-town things where everyone brings a dish and stands around talking for 3 hours about local politics and who's dating whom. She'd brought homemade chili that actually had some heat to it. Not the bland stuff most people make for church events. I'd brought store-bought cookies because my cooking skills still needed serious work. We ended up in line together at the dessert table. "Those look store-bought," she said, pointing at my cookies with a smile that took any sting out of the observation. "Guilty as charged," I replied. I can weld steel that'll hold 10,000 psi, but apparently I can't figure out how to make cookies that don't taste like cardboard," she laughed. "What kind of welding do you do?" That started a conversation about work, about why I'd moved to Idaho, about the difference between city life and small town living. She told me about her practice, how she'd specialized in large animal care, but ended up treating everything from horses to hamsters because that's what small town vets do. "You get variety," she said. "Yesterday I delivered a foal in the morning and fixed a cat's broken leg in the afternoon." Keeps things interesting. I kept my answers about my background honest but vague. Said I'd worked in industrial welding back in Washington, that I was teaching at the community college now, that I'd needed a change of scenery after a rough year. She didn't push for details, which I appreciated. We exchanged numbers, met up for coffee a few days later at a place called the Bean Counter, small shop with decent espresso and the kind of atmosphere where you could sit for hours without anyone bothering you to order more. Coffee turned into dinner the following week. Casey suggested a local place called Tony's, family-owned Italian restaurant that had been serving the same menu since 1987. The kind of place where the owner's grandmother's recipes were still hanging in frames behind the cash register. "I have to warn you," Casey said over breadsticks. "I'm pretty boring. I go to bed by 10. I read veterinary journals for fun. And I've never been to a club in my life." "Sounds perfect to me," I said, and meant it. I've had enough excitement lately to last a while. What struck me about Casey was how different she was from Brianna. Not just in personality, though they were night and day in that regard. Casey seemed genuinely interested in who I was, not who she thought I should be. When I talked about welding, about the technical challenges and the satisfaction of solving problems with your hands, she listened like it mattered. "I've always respected people who can build things," she said during our second dinner. "There's something honest about work you can see and touch. When I fix a broken bone, I know if I did it right. The animal either heals or it doesn't." By April, we'd settled into something comfortable. Dinner twice a week, weekend hikes when the weather was good, quiet evenings at her place or mine. She had a small house about 10 minutes outside town, nothing fancy but well-maintained, with a garden she was proud of, and 2 rescue dogs that had adopted her as much as she'd adopted them. I still didn't tell her about the money. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I wanted to know that what we had was real, built on something that couldn't be twisted by numbers in a bank account. She liked me for the guy who taught welding to teenagers and helped her fix a broken fence gate without being asked. That felt like enough. Then, in late April 2025, Brianna found me. I was at my dock, working on my boat engine, when I got the first message. I'd bought a small fishing boat. Nothing fancy, just a 16-footer with an outboard motor that needed some attention. Working with my hands had always helped me think, and there's something meditative about troubleshooting mechanical problems. Unknown number, but the area code was from Tacoma. I almost didn't open it. Then I saw the preview. "Dustin, it's Brianna, we need to talk." I stared at it for a long moment, deleted it, went back to adjusting the carburetor. 10 minutes later, another one came through. "I know you're upset, but please, I just want to explain." I blocked the number without reading the rest. That should have been the end of it, but Brianna was nothing if not persistent. Over the next 3 days, I got messages from 4 different numbers. Some were hers. Some were from mutual friends we'd had back in Tacoma. People I hadn't spoken to since I left. "Hey man, Brianna's trying to reach you. Can you at least hear her out?" "Dustin, she's really sorry about how things ended. Maybe give her a chance." I blocked every single one without responding. Then she started calling. Somehow she'd gotten my new number, probably convinced someone at my old apartment complex to dig around. Or maybe she hired someone to find me. I never picked up. I let every call go to voicemail and deleted each voicemail without listening to it. I knew what she wanted. I didn't need to hear her say it. On the 4th day, she showed up in person. I was coming back from teaching my welding class when I saw her white Nissan Altima parked in my driveway. The same car she'd been driving since college, though it looked like she'd had it detailed for the trip. She was sitting inside, engine off, just waiting. When she saw my truck pull up, she got out. I parked, grabbed my gear, and walked toward the front door without acknowledging her. "Dustin," she called out. Her voice was exactly how I remembered it, controlled, measured, like she'd practiced what she was going to say during the entire 6-hour drive. "Dustin, please, just 5 minutes." I stopped at the door, key in hand. I didn't turn around. "You should leave, Brianna. I drove 6 hours to get here," she said. There was an edge in her voice now, frustration creeping in. "The least you could do is look at me." I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and closed it behind me. For a second, I felt the old reflex, the impulse to hear her out, to give her that chance she was asking for. But I let it die right there in my entryway. I heard her footsteps on the gravel coming closer. She knocked. 3 sharp raps, then silence, then 3 more. "I know you're angry," she said through the door. "I know I hurt you, but Dustin, I made a mistake. I was scared when you lost your job. I didn't handle it well. I'm sorry. I want to fix this." I stood there listening. Part of me, some small, stupid part, wanted to open the door, wanted to hear what excuse she'd come up with, what story she'd convinced herself was true. But I didn't move. "I still love you," she said, quieter now. I never stopped. I walked away from the door, went into the kitchen, made myself a sandwich, turned on the TV. Eventually, I heard her car start up and drive away. That wasn't the end of it, though. She came back 2 more times that week, once on Tuesday evening, once on Thursday afternoon. Both times I didn't answer. Both times she left after 20 minutes of knocking and pleading. The third time, she left a handwritten letter tucked under my windshield wiper. I threw it away without reading it. I told Casey about it when we had dinner that Friday. We'd been seeing each other for about 6 weeks by then, and I felt like she should know what was happening. "Must have been some relationship," Casey said, cutting into her salmon. "She left me when I lost my job," I replied. "Now she wants back in." Casey raised her eyebrows. "And you're not interested?" "Not even a little bit." She smiled and reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "Good for you. Sounds like you dodged a bullet." Casey didn't know the full story. Nobody in Coeur d'Alene knew. They knew I'd moved from Washington, that I used to be a welder, that I was teaching at the college now. That was it. I lived modestly, drove the same used F-250 I'd bought before leaving Tacoma, wore the same Carhartt shirts and steel-toe boots I'd always worn. By May, Brianna had stopped showing up, but I found out through a former coworker who messaged me on LinkedIn that she'd been telling people back in Tacoma a completely different story. According to her version, she and I were working through some issues. She'd needed space to figure things out, and now she was ready to commit. She was painting herself as the one trying to make things right, and me as the stubborn ex who wouldn't give her a chance. It didn't matter. People believe what they want to believe. I'd learned that lesson thoroughly. By the time summer arrived, Casey and I had found our rhythm. We took weekend trips to Glacier National Park, spent evenings fishing from my dock, cooked dinner together at her place while her dog sprawled across the kitchen floor. She'd started leaving a toothbrush at my house. I'd started thinking about what it would look like to make this permanent. One evening in June, we were sitting on my deck watching the sunset paint the lake gold and red. Casey was reading a veterinary journal, and I was sketching out plans for a workshop I wanted to build behind the house. "I've been thinking," she said, not looking up from her magazine. "What about? About how we never talk about your past, about what happened in Washington that made you want to leave." I set down my pencil and looked at her. "It's not that interesting a story. Try me." So I told her, not everything, but the important parts. About Brianna, about losing my job, about how someone I'd planned to marry had walked away the moment things got difficult. I didn't mention the lottery, didn't mention the money, but I told her about the betrayal, about the choice to disappear rather than fight. Casey listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I'm glad she left." "Yeah? If she hadn't, you wouldn't be here. And I wouldn't have met the person who fixes my fence gates without being asked, and teaches kids that working with your hands isn't something to be ashamed of." That night, lying next to Casey in her bed with her dog snoring on the floor, I realized something. The money had given me freedom, but it hadn't given me happiness. This had. This quiet life with someone who saw value in who I actually was. People talk about revenge like it has to be loud, like you have to destroy someone, humiliate them, make them pay in some dramatic confrontation. But that's not how real revenge works. Real revenge is living well. It's building something better without them. It's proving that their absence didn't break you. It freed you. Brianna wanted me to fail. She expected me to crumble, to come crawling back to prove that she'd been right to leave. Instead, I disappeared. I rebuilt. I found peace in a place she'd never see, with people she'd never meet, doing work that mattered. And when she finally realized what she'd lost, I wasn't there to witness it, because I'd already moved on. I'm still in Coeur d'Alene now in October 2025, still with Casey, who knows about the money now and couldn't care less. Still teaching welding twice a week to kids who remind me why I love the work. Still living a life that's mine. The money's in the bank, managed and invested properly, but it doesn't define me. It's just security, a reminder that sometimes the universe has perfect timing. Brianna's somewhere back in Tacoma, telling her version of the story to anyone who'll listen. I don't know if she's happy. I don't really care, because I found my future, and it never included her.